Hi, my name is Morgan Bell. I am the State Director of Florida MUFON. And we are going to share with you a new segment called The Need to Know. In this segment, we will be having interviews with many different types of witnesses, mainly official government pilots, trained observers, above board, to get their side of the story, what they saw, what they experienced, and what they witnessed. And this will be the first episode of many to come, and we hope to use this as a great tool to the public for information that comes into our chapter here for MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network of Florida. So if you can, just enjoy, and I hope most of you have questions, or maybe some of you are actually witnesses to this event, or maybe some of you know somebody that were witness to this event or similar events. We would like to hear your story. So again, we are a nonprofit research and investigative organization, and we hope you enjoy the new segments. We also have a few more coming out this month, so this intro is a little long, but this is our first time getting some of the new content up. As you've been seeing, we've been putting quite a bit up. So please contact us from our website at www.mufon.com or the local Florida chapter website at www.floridamufon.org. First case in the new segment called The Need to Know is case number 48818. The primary witness to the case is Paul Kenwar. He is a radar operator at the time in 1989 over the Miami International Airport. Very interesting. So if any of you have any information pertaining to this case, or if you are a witness to this case, you can contact me directly at morgan.fl.mufon@gmail.com. I am the State Director of MUFON Florida, and here's our first, The Need to Know.
Okay. Paul Charles Kenwar Jr., and I was an air traffic control specialist at Miami International at that time. I was working the radar. I was a radar controller at that time. Okay, I am a retired air traffic controller. I started off in 1976 as an Air Force controller. I was briefly in Upper Peninsula of Michigan. That base closed, and then I was sent to Patrick Air Force Base in Cocoa Beach, which was real close to my home. And I got out, went to college in 1980, and the strike occurred in 81, and I got hired in early 82. I served as a tower and a radar controller in Flint, Michigan, then Columbus, Ohio, and then I went to Miami, which is where this event that we're going to talk about occurred, and then up to Detroit for most of my career was in Detroit. And I retired in 2007.
Okay. Now, when did this event occur? What year?
It occurred in 1989. The month was either late. I don't have the exact date. Okay, so it's either late September or early October. And I know that because I went on a hunting trip with my father-in-law, and I told him about it, and it had only happened a few days before that.
Okay. And can you tell us about the location where this event happened, specifics about the Miami International Airport?
Yeah, it was, the control tower was on the west end of the airport, between the runways, parallel runways at that time. And the event occurred midfield, in the midfield terminal area, where the commuters at that time were parked at.
And just go ahead and give us a timeline of the event and what you heard and how you became witness to essentially the after effects of this event, and just go ahead and give us an introduction about what was seen that day or that morning.
Okay. The day I came in, the day of the event, I had to work shift where I came to work at 10:30. When I came to work, the place was buzzing with something, and I said, "Well, what happened?" And they said, "You didn't hear?" And I said, "No." And they said, "The guys on the mid shift this morning saw a huge UFO." And so I said, "Well, who was it?" And they told me who it was. And so I had to wait because it was his mid shift to see him a couple days later. And as soon as I saw him, he looked at me and said, "I'm not talking about this at all." So I really had only heard a cursory summary of what had happened. So, I told you that it happened just a few days before I told my father-in-law, but actually it was a couple weeks. It had happened a couple weeks before because it took him, this fellow, that long to tell me. And we were working at the far end of the radar room, and he said, "Okay, I'll tell you." So he told me what happened is that he was up in the tower, and it's lightly staffed at that time of the day. It was still dark, and probably around 5:30, probably. And his relief came up because they had an early shift that would come up and get the guys out. And so they were just sitting there talking, his relief and a flight data assistant. So there were 3 people in the tower. And one of them was looking to the north, and he looked up at the tower display, the tower radar that we use for checking spacing and the sequence to the airport. And he saw a primary target, which is just a radar return of something big to the north, moving pretty fast. That display only has a 20-mile range on it. It has a variable range, but usually set it at 20. And whatever was coming pretty fast. So he looks where he would think to see it, and he sees a large covering up the lights that comes across. So it's low, not high in the sky. The thing is low. And he goes, "Hey guys, look at this!" And when everybody looks, this thing is right in midfield, and it stops. And so it's not dark, but the lights are still on it. And this thing just stops midfield, and it's probably about 100 feet off the ground. It was like the same level as the tower, or thereabouts. They might have been looking down at it slightly, but from where it was at, the angle would have been, level just about. Anyway, so this thing is huge, and everybody is, the 3 guys that are there, they're dumbstruck. They don't know what to think. And this thing is stationary and turns on a light, a very bright white light on something on the ground. And it's a vehicle that's parked there, one of the airport vehicles, and the guy inside was sleeping. Well, those vehicles all have ground control frequency on their radios. And so he wakes up bathed in this light, and he is just freaking out. And I heard it was quite comical to hear it. I never did hear a copy of the tape, but like I said, this guy was really upset, thinking the tower controllers were playing some sort of a trick with their light gun. And little did he know it was not a light gun at all. So anyways, this goes on for some time, and then the light shuts off, and it's getting brighter and brighter, more and more ambient light is, and so they're starting to see this thing better and better. And at that point there, I stopped the guy that was telling me the story, and I said, "Okay, so how big was this thing?" He goes, "Paul, it was the size of a 727, which is quite large." And I said, "What color was it?" And he said it was like a gray-green, and it was shaped like not a horseshoe, but kind of that a similar shape to that. And it stopped and just sat there. Now, there was a controller coming in that lived in my subdivision to the north. He lived north of Miami, actually due west of Fort Lauderdale Airport. And he was coming in to work, so he was heading south. And there was a supervisor that lived south of Miami International that was coming in, heading north. And they both told me that they saw this thing go straight up. So this thing shuts its light off, sits for a while, and then goes straight up. And when it catches the attention of the two controllers I was just telling you about, and it went right by an Eastern Airbus that was coming in from the island. The pilot, seeing this thing go past him, said, "What in the hell was that?" And he's kind of asking the radar controller downstairs what's going on. And so the radar controller says, "Hey, what's going on up there? What you guys just do?" And they said, "We didn't do anything." Well, he said, "Well, what was that?" And he said, "It's a UFO." And so the controller, he coded it somehow. I don't know how exactly he said it, but the pilots got the idea, and they settled down. When they were landing later, they said, "Well, I guess I'm a believer now." But the entire flight crew on that Airbus saw it in the cockpit anyways, and anybody that happened to be looking out that side of the airplane saw it too. So anyways, this thing goes straight up, quite high, but still low enough for everybody to see it. It stops again and hovers. And then it turns on several different lights, like a green, a red, and a white. Something like that. I know it had a red and white. I seem to recall some other color too, but I think it was green, maybe not. Anyways, and it did some strange gyrations flipping around, but the two controllers said that so it was quite odd. And then it stopped again, shut its lights off, and went up and apparently out of the atmosphere. And that was the end of the event, except for the fact that when this was reported to the region, because the pilot might have made some comment to the effect that, or they thought they needed to make a report about it, the region came down and said they offered something off the Cape, which was, about 180 miles to the north, 150 miles to the north. And they said, "No, that wasn't something from the Cape." And they said, "Well, it was something military." And they said, No. They rejected all of their thoughts on what it was, because they knew what they saw. And finally they said, "Okay, fine. You didn't see anything, and you're not to talk about this with anyone." And that was the end of the event.
Okay. And just to recap, the object that you described, like horseshoe-like or boomerang, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And
roughly that shape.
Roughly that shape, yeah. And did they ever describe the surface of the object itself? Because it was so close, I figured. What kind of descriptions was he giving you, if you can recall?
There was no windows that they saw. They saw, just the color of it. So whatever it was, pretty much opaque.
Okay. And as far as its movements, you had recalled that they witnessed this thing on radar, correct?
Yes.
Were there any calculations done for the perceived or to the calculated speed or distance traveled that this object did? Were they able to determine anything quantitative about it?
If they did, I don't know. I didn't hear about it. I just know that the controller remarked that it was moving pretty fast, and then it came to a sudden stop, just like it would, in a cartoon.
Okay. And you'd mentioned, that there were grounds crews. Roughly, what time in the morning did this happen, and what kind of activity goes on in an airport that size at that time?
It's pretty light at that point. Miami had a pretty good sized cargo operation, but about that time there wouldn't be a whole lot of activity going on. Just a few airplanes coming in here and there, and as far as the time of day goes, it would have been dusk and then getting lighter. One thing I didn't tell you is that this fellow told me that for 45 minutes after this event happened, there was a chartreuse yellow-green fog, like a haze that this thing had left behind. And it just stayed there because it was a really calm wind morning. No wind, actually. And it just stayed there for about 45 minutes.
Wow. Okay. And did they describe anything else about that fog, or was it the size of the object, or was it bigger, or was it just like a?
No, they didn't say. It just it was a residue that they could see, and it stayed. And it was they remarked that it was really weird.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you had mentioned towards the end that they did have interaction with their superiors. What form? Was it just verbal, or were there written statements to the staff? And what kind of conversations occurred at work, I guess, for you at the tower from that point on?
The morning of it, there was other people, other controllers that started talking about stuff that they had seen. And a couple of the events had, occurred there at Miami. One was in Orlando, but, Florida type events. Mm-hmm. And as far as the communication from the higher ups, I don't believe there was anything written at all. It was all verbal. At least it sounded that way.
And what were the standard practices during that time in the FAA for unidentified, untransponded aircraft that were seemingly not related to military activity?
If we were to get a report from a pilot or even from a civilian just calling in wondering what they should do, we had a 1-800 number that we would give them, and we would basically hear the basic story. They always wanted to say it because they were usually shook up about it, and I wanted to hear it if I happened to take the phone call. And then we would give them the phone number if we thought it was a legitimate type thing.
And where did the phone number go to?
It was a non-government reporting. It wasn't an agency. I forget. I should remember who it was, but I don't. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. At that time, I think there were only a few. One of them was us, MUFON, and the other might have been the National Reporting Center, UFO Reporting Center. NICAP was one, and also APRO, I believe, was around. So, but okay. Were there any other details involved? And one of the items, obviously, I mean, we know that there's names. Obviously, we need to keep those private because we don't have their permission to give out names or anything like that. But as far as you're aware, you do know of individuals that were working that night and or that morning or on the site and knew about the event. And how many other people do you believe were witness to this event?
Well, there were 3 guys in the tower. The poor guy in the truck, he would have been a good one to get a hold of.
Yeah.
And the Eastern crew. Those were the main witnesses.
Now, is that the name of the airline during that time?
Eastern Airlines, yeah.
Eastern Airlines, and it was an Airbus?
Airbus 300, yeah.
Airbus 300, okay. And as far as you know, as far as radar data systems weren't really in place Is that correct at that time?
Well, being that it was right there at the airport, and then it went straight up, I don't believe the radar would have ever seen it at that, from that point on. Now, obviously, there was some sort of a primary return that they saw, and that would have been recorded as it came in from the north to the airport.
Okay.
But that data at that time was like for 15 days.
As far as you know, the object that was observed, according to their descriptions, has no association with a known aircraft. Is that correct?
Right.
That concludes the end of our first episode of The Need to Know. If you have questions, or you may know of someone that was a witness to this event, or if you yourself were a part of this event, please contact us directly at florida.mufon@gmail.com. Or you can contact the State Director of Florida MUFON at morgan.fl.mufon@gmail.com. Until next time, this has been an episode of The Need to Know.